What's going on, everybody? My name's Haas and I'm here with another video. So today we're going to be dispelling some FUD. Maxi just hate over XRP and the banking institution. Today we're going to go over XRP is a shitcoin, or at least my rendition of why it's not. So let's get into it. We're going to be dispelling some of the most common thought of as facts for XRP and Ripple. So the FUD cases that we're going to go over, and if there's anything that I missed that you guys want me to bring up in another video, absolutely I will. So please let me know if there's any concerns that you have about Ripple specifically or XRP, anything. And we're not even going to, we're going to talk a little bit about the tokens here, but let's keep we're going to keep other things in focus in terms of valuations, how Bitcoin and XRP scales, and how it works with the global structure. So first, that XRP is a banker's coin. Ripple holds 55 billion XRP. I hear this a lot. Ripple prints more XRP. There's less units of BTC than XRP, so there's 21 million Bitcoin. Low price performance for XRP. We've seen that throughout the entire bear market, that it was very low and it never reached back to its all-time high of $3.30. And here Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs again. So what gives? And then lastly, why not just use a stable coin? So let's go into the banker's coin a little bit deeper, and we can kind of talk about it. So first off, XRP is a decentralized currency. Its main use is arbitrage, so transferring value from one thing to another thing, right? This could be currency. It doesn't have to be currency, but just to make it easy, let's say US dollar to the euro. If you wanted to send it, XRP can act as the arbitrage to make it happen near instantly, and you don't even have to think about it. All it depends on is how many pairs RippleNet has with XRP. Ripple understands that banks need this moving forward into the global structure. And I'm not talking about small individual banks, because of course, when you're talking about things like individual checking accounts, I can't see retail people going to banks anymore. But banks are always going to be investment firms and holding massive stores of value. And we know that, maybe the small independent banks, we're going to see a breakup of those, which arguably are the wrong banks that, the cryptocurrency community should be fighting against. But neither here nor there. I'm just saying, you're going after the little guy when you have JP Morgan or, some Chinese bank that holds a bunch of Bitcoin or something. Two, we have a very archaic system right now in terms of our global payment transfers. This is a huge problem. Brad Garlinghouse has come out and said that it's a multi-trillion-dollar problem, whereas people are, money's being lost or billed incorrectly because it essentially goes through an archaic rail system from like one bank to another bank to another bank just to facilitate a certain transfer, right? And some banks even hold like a massive amount of reserves in other currencies just so they can, make transfers a little bit quicker, right? So it's a huge issue, and it's tying up a lot of capital. If someone had come out to these banks and said, hey, listen, all that capital that you have, all the euro that you're just holding is euro because you get a lot of euro transfers, how about you free that up and just let us do the arbitrage with XRP? You don't have to worry about it, and you can go ahead and invest that capital into something else, right? Make a loan and loan it out to the community, whatever it is. So that in turn, completely negates the whole need to hold just money to facilitate a quick transfer when you don't want to pay, Western Union or some other Swift creditor or something to transfer a bunch of money. When you're talking about transferring, and XRP specifically transfers and settles in between 4 to 8 seconds, usually much quicker, 2 to 6, and it'll settle for fractions of a cent. There are millions, and I shouldn't say hundreds of millions, but I think one example was a CEO had mentioned in, I think, Swell or some sort of conference, that they had transferred $43 million for a couple of cents, right? So that's huge. When you talk about transfers now, where it takes longer to send money than it takes to send a parcel. At that point, you know that the system is broken, right? So things like instant transfers and instant payments really, really would transform how the world works today. So you could see the definite use case in terms of a global and quick transfers where it's settling in just a few seconds rather than days or weeks, right? Ripple also understands that they need to work with regulators to get anything done. This is just how it works. We need, know your customer and anti-money laundering laws to make sure that we're legislatively compliant with our laws. If you don't like that, I guess you're libertarian and you don't like government, which sure, there can be some arguments, but that's not the world that we live in. Bottom line, we have governments and we get governed, and we need to abide by regulations so no bad actors are ruining the apple for the bunch, right? So to put this into perspective, right now, to operate in the United States and to have a bank and everything else and get paid, or buy a product like insurance, the insurance company has to know you and know that your funds are received legitimately, you haven't done any criminal action to get these funds, and now you're buying it, right? They have to know that you're abiding by the law to pay for the goods that they're offering. So that's the whole point. And obviously Ripple knows that we need to abide by those laws to be successful. And obviously Bitcoin is heading there, and we're seeing compliance. The compliance for currencies is based on the individual companies to do this, not the currency itself. The currency is decentralized in nature. The ledger is completely open. So the only currencies that this really poses any legislative problem to are things like Monero. So this isn't FUD against Bitcoin. It's just saying that Ripple has definitely done strides to make sure that there's legislation for crypto. So let's talk about the escrow. So these are the 2 points: that Ripple has 55 billion XRP, which is true, and Ripple just prints more XRP every month. Both statements are kind of true, but how people twist it is a little bit different. So yes, there is 55 billion XRP that was put into escrow and then handed over to Ripple, technically by Ripple. Because Ripple, if you don't know, the creators of XRP founded Ripple afterwards. Not all of the creators are working for Ripple now, but prior to, they created XRP, founded Ripple, handed over the escrow to Ripple. But the ledger itself and the XRP ledger is actually with a nonprofit group. So the escrow was even put into place in the first place just to distribute the rest of the XRP that was created in the initial creation of XRP, to make sure that that is distributed over time. So gradually 1 billion XRP is released from escrow every month. And then Ripple determines what to do with this XRP. So it can go towards helping on-demand liquidity and adding liquidity into the system. Or if they see that there's no need to release the XRP into the ecosystem at the time, then at that point, they go ahead and tack it on to the end of the escrow. So this is going to happen every month for the next, until the escrow is gone, essentially. And then after the initial amount that's in escrow, then we're working on whatever Ripple put back in. There is talks, and I could see this as a potential. I'm not saying that this is going to happen or anything. Nobody said this, but I could see, because there's so much FUD, I could see Ripple actually handing over control of the escrow to another entity, probably a government entity, most likely in the United States. I'm not saying that this is happening. I'm just saying that there's a lot of FUD about the escrow and the fact that Ripple controls it, that makes people think that XRP is more of a security rather than a currency. But in fact, Ripple itself is not valued by XRP. XRP is not the stock of Ripple. Whereas if Ripple, so let me give you an analogy. That's like saying oil is Exxon stock, right? Well, that's ridiculous. But Exxon does things to increase the price of oil, right? So you would think, okay, well, like that actually makes sense. But oil is not a security. Oil is a commodity. XRP is a currency. Yes, Ripple is going to do things to enhance the ecosystem. That doesn't only help out crypto, but it also mainly helps out XRP. But that doesn't mean that it's a security, right? And I think that's been outlined in the last couple of days, and we have regulatory clarity coming from Brian Brooks and the SEC. So I'm really hoping that we get that clear message in the next week, but it's not a security. The escrow's there, but it's adequately proportioned, and I haven't seen anything that's concerning. And just to hammer this point home about the escrow, so Ripple does do an insights quarter report. So every quarter they go ahead and do a report about XRP price, the volume, and everything in terms of the liquidity in certain areas. And then they also, in every single report, they talk about what happened with the escrow money. So in Q3 2020, 3 billion XRP was released out of the escrow, so 1 billion each month. And then in total, 2.4 billion XRP were returned, subsequently put into the new escrow contracts. So again, that will start releasing once the current supply is already gone. So it essentially tacks it on to the end of the escrow, right? So you can see that obviously they returned most of the XRP into the escrow, which tells me a couple of things. One, they're doing this in the best interest of the ecosystem. They want to make sure that the ecosystem's healthy. So they're not dumping XRP in. They're only using it when liquidity is needed. And obviously right now they don't need the liquidity because we're not really at the utility phase-ish. Like we are kind of in terms of Mexico and everything else. Mexico is starting to use XRP to arbitrage payments, but so there you go. That's the escrow. I mean, I get the FUD around it, but at the same time, when you look at Satoshi Nakamoto having 2 million Bitcoin, which is almost 10% of the going Bitcoin, and then 2% of the Bitcoin wallets hold 95% of the Bitcoin. So when you talk about something that's centralized and, Ripple holding or having control over half of the XRP supply, I would argue that much less people have access to the majority of Bitcoin, right? And again, not FUD on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is always going to be a fantastic store of value. I'm long Bitcoin. I own Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is not solving a problem that is completely unique to what XRP is trying to solve. So I think the FUD in a lot of ways is a little undeserved because the two projects are not the same and they're not competing in any way. So tokenomics. So Bitcoin has 18.5 approximately million current supply, and then 21 million max supply. So once we have finished mining all of the Bitcoin, then at that point we will have maximum 21 million. And of course we know that multiple millions of Bitcoin are just lost, right? Lost in hard drives and in landfills in some cases. There's just there's no ways to access these wallets that people have lost keys to, or hard drives have melted and fried, or whatever the issue is that has lost the private keys to some of this Bitcoin. So the supply is a little bit less. That doesn't matter in terms of like how the market cap is calculated. But we know that there's going to just be dormant BTC that will never be moved again, right? So we understand that. Now XRP, this number is 45.5 billion current XRP out of a maximum of 100 billion. So 100 billion XRP was created in the inception, and then at that point, the majority of it, the majority would have been put in escrow and then released at 1 billion a month per month until today. So what does this mean, right? So I guess a lot of people say, yeah, well, there's less BTC, right? So, why would I want something that's less scarce than BTC? And I would argue that it's not the scarcity that's the issue. One, XRP has a couple of features that the transaction fee, instead of traditional with BTC, the transaction fee is paid out to the miners. But with XRP, the transaction fee, which is a fraction of a cent, is burnt and just gone. So that XRP is out of circulation, never going to come back again. So it is deflationary by nature at a much larger denomination. So it's still an asset that is scarce. It's not a plentiful asset. And then once the escrow is complete, then at that point it'll only reduce from there, right? But I would argue that it scales much better with the financial system that we currently have and that we're going to move into. I do think that 21 million is far too small. So let's talk about market caps. So current market caps right now, and I use the US in a lot of these models, but let's talk about it. So Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple, they have a combined $6.1 trillion market cap. Gold has an estimate of about 9 trillion. I suspect it's a lot more, probably more like 11 trillion. United States real estate is about $33.6 trillion. The stock market is 89.5, and that's global stocks. So that's not just the United States. The 28 largest banks in the world is about 40 trillion, a little bit more actually. If you look at, I have the list here. I think I have the list. No, these are companies. I had it, but anyway, you got to believe me on that. But you can look it up. They have well over 40 trillion. That was a low ballpark. Okay, so what is a derivative, right? It's this weird concept, but it can be simple once you understand some aspects of it. But I think in a lot of ways, it's purposefully just confusing, which is why it has like an astonishing amount of value. But it's a function of a real variable. So something like a hedge on something, or an ETF would be like a small type of derivative. Puts, calls, futures. It can go into like a slew of tons of other things. Derivatives is just a huge mass of just other trading options, but it's ways to skim profit off the top, right? And this is how there's just so much money accumulated in places like stock markets and further down into options and individual exchanges. Like it's just an astronomical amount, so much so that it would completely clear global debt, right? The amount that's in the derivative market alone could completely wipe out the debt of everything, right? So it's a lot of money that sits in derivatives. Now, the actual value of like what these options represent, the actual value of the variables, I think is apparently a lot lower. I don't know like what the actual number is. I saw some like wild numbers of like $16 trillion. So like how $16 trillion moves up to 556 trillion in options. I have no conceivable idea, but I think that's literally the purpose of it. But the fact of the matter is, when you're looking at these numbers, the numbers are astronomical when you talk about it. So let's look at how this denomination works and what happens here. So when we're talking about market caps, now I'm not talking about that these market caps are coming soon. I personally think that we are going to hit a crypto market cap of upwards to $1 trillion plus. Right now we're at 550 billion. I think we're moving to $1 trillion fairly quick, probably in the next couple months, early 2021. I think it'll be very feasible that we're at least $1 trillion. It could be a little bit more. I'm thinking probably, we'll roughly hit the 4 trillion mark is like my guess of like cryptocurrency. Where that'll go, I think majority obviously Bitcoin, and then it'll go from there. Usually things go to Bitcoin first and then trickle into the other markets. But when we look at market caps, so an $18.5 trillion Bitcoin market cap is 1 cent per Satoshi, right? So there's denominations in each Bitcoin. So one whole Bitcoin is whatever price it is. I think it's 18,000 today or 17.9. It's floating around. I'm trying not to look at prices all the time. So 1 cent per Satoshi. And then for XRP, a $455 trillion market cap. So a $10,000 XRP would be 1 cent per drop, right? So why am I talking about this as if we're going to a $455 trillion market cap? Because I truly believe when we're talking about the future and how things are going to work, because right now we're looking at the climate being an issue, and Bitcoin mining is becoming this energy thing. So Square put in millions of dollars for green Bitcoin, right? So to make green energy to produce Bitcoin rather than fossil fuel, which is ultimately where we're going in terms of the global economy of trying to be green. I think in the next future, like in the next 10 to 15 years, if your company is focused on the green aspect, I think you're going to do well. And that just seems to be where politics and everything is going. But when you talk about markets and global money, so just bank reserves, you're talking about 40 trillion plus. A money supply alone is in the hundreds of trillions, right? When you talk about just like individual money supply for the globe. And then you start going into derivatives, right? So when you're talking about option trading and tokenized stocks and futures, puts, calls, all of these different things that go into this huge quadrillion-dollar market. If you tack on Xrp's capabilities, and that's things like instant settlements, fractions of a cent fees, that's instantly burnt, so the money is deflationary in essence, so you can't print more. It solves every current problem that we have, because right now a lot of people are moving away from the United States dollar. Why? Because shocker, shocker, the United States is printing more dollars. You can't print more XRP. Even though people say Ripple prints more XRP, they don't. It just comes out of an escrow. Once the escrow's gone, it's gone. That's it. Regardless of whether or not Xrp is Ripple is using it to fund Ripple itself. If you look at the tokenomics of most projects, it's very common for a project to allocate a good portion of their token to their development. So it's just, when I hear that FUD, and this is, this is going to be the rant that ends the video. Okay, when I hear that FUD, that Ripple has 50% of XRP, has 55 billion XRP. And then they talk about like how that they're just dumping it on the community. They're not. They're using it to fulfill the ODL requirements and to enhance the actual ecosystem of XRP. It hasn't dumped the price. Maybe it's suppressed the price a little bit. You have Jed McCaleb selling his XRP at a time fashion, at a purposeful rate, right? And that's going to be gone eventually, right? We're not talking about like tens of thousands of years here or hundreds of years. We're talking about like maybe 10 years, and then all of this is done, right? 55 months for just the escrow, and then Jed McCaleb I think is done in a year. Realistically, guys, it doesn't make sense when you throw the FUD on XRP, but you don't throw the FUD on other tokens with their tokenomics allocating 50% or more of their tokens to the project, right? It just makes no sense. Absolutely zero sense. So do I see a problem with them having 55 billion if I think that it's this valuable, right? If in the future, in 50 years, when the total financial market in terms of options, trades, and everything else is completely run on XRP, do I think that it's an issue that Ripple had so much back in the day? No, not really, because I think it's going to be gone far before this happens. And I think if Ripple is smart, maybe they just hand it off to a government. I personally, I would say no, because the government's done so well with the USD. But hey, to go over price performance on the yearly, XRP's at 153% and Bitcoin's at 149%. So I don't know what you're talking about, because I see XRP outperforming Bitcoin. Just saying. And if you have dollar cost average, I just got in. I just got into cryptocurrency. I've been dollar cost averaging since early 2020, and I'm at 130% profit plus. So if you had just invested that amount, you would be at a similar amount of profit. So I get that the chart, and this is the problem when people are looking at like the chart itself and determining the merits of a token based on the overall performance of the chart. That's where you're going wrong, right? There's a lot of factors that keep XRP down. And if you'll remember, because people will talk about, oh well, like Bitcoin doesn't have any pressure like that. Of course they do. Bitcoin miners kept you like clearly under 10K for months and months and months because they kept dumping on the community every time you hit 10K. So I'm you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense when you get the FUD arguments on either side. XRP is an excellent investment. The use case is much grander than what Bitcoin solves. Does that mean that Bitcoin isn't going to go up to $1 million Bitcoin? Or does that mean that Bitcoin won't hit an that's $1 million Bitcoin, $18.5 trillion market cap? No, I think they'll hit that. Absolutely. Probably in the next 5 to 10 years. 100% early shot. I think we are like on target to hit 150 to 200K Bitcoin. So yeah, I fully see $1 million Bitcoin easily. But in 50 years plus, I see it being a lot more. And when you're talking about amounts that much that we can't even conceive, because sure, the deficit, the debt of the United States is something like $25 trillion. I'm making up a number. I know it's above 22. The derivatives market is 556 trillion to 1.8 quadrillion. So we're talking about peanuts. When I hate it because now I look at like the market cap, right? When you're looking at the market cap of crypto, it's 550 billion. That's nothing. It's super small. And with XRP, or stable coins, like why would you use XRP and not a stable coin, right? So XRP is not a stable coin. The price is volatile right now, mainly because the small market cap, just like we've talked about, super small. There's not a lot of money in it. I think there's only like 26 billion in XRP alone. There's nothing. It's nothing. If 550 billion is nothing, 26 is absolutely nothing. I'm pretty sure Bill Gates has way more. I don't want to do math right now, but Bill Gates has many times 26. I think he's worth like 400 billion. So just put that in perspective. Stablecoins are backed by currencies, right? So that's why they're a little bit more solid and they stay on an even ground. But you might think, okay, so like if XRP is so volatile, why is XRP good for arbitrage? Like, wouldn't you get slammed on a dump? Well, the fact of the matter is, right, because this is a legitimate problem that happened in crypto, right? People would have Bitcoin and they'd want to buy Ethereum or something. So they'd send their Bitcoin to an exchange or a wallet, and it'd take 2 hours because, Bitcoin was hitting all-time highs and people couldn't sell out. So they were waiting. And then by the time it got there, it dropped, and then Ethereum shot up. So they missed their trade, right? Like it takes a long time to make that transfer. But when XRP settles in a matter of seconds, you don't have to worry about it, right? As long as it's stable within seconds, you're generally fine, which it typically is. You rarely get like a 1 second volatility spike. Rarely ever. I don't think ever. So it just doesn't happen. So it is completely irrelevant in terms of arbitrage and transferring. But yeah, that's it, guys. That is my complete dispelling of the FUD. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think I am. I think one thing, though, you shouldn't take financial advice from me. I think you should do your own research. Flare just came out today, guys. I'm going to be talking about this in the podcast, and this actually isn't the podcast, surprisingly enough. I'm going to be talking about this in the podcast, but Flare's out, and well, it's not out, but like, the airdrop, it's or the snapshot, it's today. It's super excited. So 1-to-1 of Spark in your wallets. So that's great. It's going to be distributed over time. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the podcast. But go ahead and like the video if you thought that I gave you some good, knowledge about Xrp. If you think I dispelled the FUD a little bit, and give me a subscribe, and then give me a comment if you think I'm wrong. Let me know. All right, see you guys.